Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining the podcast. My name is Max Carter, and in the next 60 minutes, you're going to hear from Garika Singh. And Garika is the youngest athlete to compete at the Rio Olympics in 2016, setting national records in 2021 in Tokyo. And as the Paris Olympics are approaching, you're going to hear firsthand what it takes to be an athlete and what can you take from her own experience and apply it to your life. I'm very excited for the conversation with Garika, and I hope you enjoy. So, in the spirit of good storytelling, I kind of want to start in the beginning and go along your journey. Getting to know you in the last couple of weeks been just interesting, and I think it's just worth sharing. So, I understand that you've been born in Nepal. Is it right?
Okay, yeah. Nepal is a um, now we say is a developing country. Um, so I was born in Nepal. I spent the first 3 years of my life. I continuously go back once or twice a year. For me, it's a home, but for people who've never been, when you first come, it can be quite a shock given we have things like load shedding, so we don't get electricity 24 hours a day. It has been ranked one of, if not the most polluted city in the world. Um, and there's definitely a huge polarization in terms of wealth with people in the country. There's extreme poverty and then wealth, which is obviously something that isn't great. Um, but in general, like for me, when I see Nepal, like you can't label it in one, um, you can't give it all in one category, given that the city is a completely different atmosphere to all the other villages outside. So I've been to places like most famous people might know Pokhara, which is outside of Nepal. It's more like a holiday destination for tourists. It's got mountains, very fresh air, um, very green, which is completely different to the city, which is very hustle and bustle, let's say.
Right.
The easiest
Like London.
I could describe it is very similar to New Delhi. Yes, London, but like 10 times more cars and motorbikes and much
Wow.
less road rules, let's say. um,
Over.
so I guess to be an athlete in a country like Nepal was very difficult, especially um, now that there's more people in my sporting industry growing up in Nepal and trying to become like an athlete as I did. It's very difficult because you don't even get 24-hour electricity, let alone having access to facilities like heated pools or athletic stadiums.
Right. And so you mentioned that you moved to the UK when you were 3. Is that right?
Yes.
And it was hard for sure.
I actually moved to Scotland when I was three. Um, so yeah, so I've moved around a lot. So I moved to Scotland when I was 3 years old. I knew absolutely no English, so I used to go to my nursery, no absolutely no English, and then I started learning English. Completely forgot all the Nepalese I learned as a child because I was getting very confused between the two languages, and even now, like I'm still trying to pick up all the Nepalese I lost as a child. Um, and then after that, I moved down to a small place called Preston. I don't know many people know Preston, but I love Preston. And then moved to Leeds for a bit, about 8 months. Then down to London. And then I went to boarding school for a bit in Devon. And then I came back to London. And now I'm in university in Boston.
I mean, wow, what a traveler. It's
So
kind of
yeah.
same thing. The reason I brought up Hertfordshire was that my sister lived there and I kind of lived there the first couple of years
Yeah.
as well. I went to, lived in Yorkshire. I lived in Wales. I lived in England, all sorts of parts. So it's interesting to see that people
Yeah.
live in different parts because sometimes people just come in and they go straight to London and you just never leave London. That's us.
Yeah.
So some of the locals
Yeah.
here as well, like, oh, you've been around. You've been around. You know cities outside of London or
Yeah.
Leeds, right? So definitely love
Yeah.
to hear
Yeah.
that.
Exactly.
And so you started swimming at the age of 9.
Yes. So I started swimming like most kids at their local gym. My dad just put me in lessons. He's like, this is a life skill. Like, you need to know if, like, you go on holiday or something and you jump in the sea, then what? If you can't swim, then you're gonna drown. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into swimming. I absolutely hated it. I would
Wow.
never put my face underwater. I would even as a child when I had showers. I don't know if this is gonna sound really weird, but um, I don't know if some people can relate. But they used to have these kind of hats that look like sunflowers, so you wouldn't get your face wet. when you had a
Yeah.
shower as a child. Um, so you'd only get your hair wet, and then my parents, like, when I was much younger, um, had to do that. Otherwise, I just wouldn't have any showers as a child. So, yeah, it's a miracle how I got into swimming as someone who was so scared of water at such a young age.
Wow. I mean, a lot of people, most of us done some sort of art classes or, I've done swimming, the fun part. I would
Yeah,
hardly call it swimming. It was pretty terrible, but the point stands. I've done swimming like, I don't know, again, art classes or theater or what have
yeah,
you, honestly. And, but you kind of taken it to the next level. I'm just kind of curious to hear how do you do how it goes from being like a hobby or something you adapt what you in into
yeah,
at one point realizing, well, there's
yeah.
something more than that actually here.
Yeah, so I think a huge factor was luck, given the fact that I, as a child, definitely preferred tennis as a sport. I was a lot better at tennis. Um, and I did other sports, like I did football, gymnastics. I did theatre, like it was like acting, dancing, and singing. I did like all the sports you can think of that my parents just chucked me in because I was just a kid with so much energy. Um, and I think a huge factor was the extrinsic side. So for me, like when I started winning medals in swimming, um, even if it was just participation medals, like as a child, you're like, wow, that's my first medal, like I wanna carry and do this and things like that. And the two sports I narrowed it down to as I started getting a bit older was swimming and tennis. Um, Tennis I was a lot better at, but the coach I had at the time was just very uninspiring. Didn't seem like he liked kids, which was really strange being a kids tennis coach. So I kind of went into the swimming route, and then as I started swimming more and more, I started getting more medals. And then I was like, hey, okay, this is quite fun. Like, I'm getting medals. Um, so my coach, who I had at the time, was like, like, where are you from? Maybe you should enter some national competitions. And my parents had no idea that you could even do this. So it kind of started from that point, going back to my home in Nepal, doing the nationals there, and started winning national titles at quite a young age, which kind of launched my career as a swimmer.
Wow. I mean, that's quite a story. And again, one of the questions I have here was actually about like coaching and the right mentorship. And it's interesting because
Yeah.
if it was reversed, you might have ended up following the tennis route, right?
Yeah, completely. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. And is your coach Adam Taylor? Is that right? If I've done my research correctly,
Yes, he's my current coach now. Yes.
just kind of just reflecting on coaching and some of the mentors you've had along the way. How did that impact you? Because I've been last couple of years I've been quite active in talking to people and getting some mentorship, and I realize how important it is. So
Yeah.
just begin taking it to the sports side of things. How would you describe it?
Oh, 100%. It's one of the biggest things in the sporting industry. I started off my swimming career at a club which pushed me to do events and swimming strokes that wasn't for me. So essentially, I swim sprint backstroke, and the club I was at and the coach who was coaching me at the time wanted me to swim long distance freestyle because it was a lot easier to make nationals in Britain in events like 800 freestyle, because who wants to swim the 800 freestyle? Like, it's a 9 minutes long race. It's not fun. Um, so yeah, so when my coach used to push essentially the whole club into doing those kind of races, when I was clearly not a 800 freestyler, it really affected my mental health and how I perceive swimming, because he would tell me like, no, 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 you're an 800 freestyler. This is what you do. This is what you're going to be good at, and things like that. And my parents knew I wasn't, but you have to trust your coach. At the club, we were told not to question our coach. Our parents had very limited contact with the coach when I was at that specific club. So it was very difficult for me I think it was between the ages about 12 to about 16. I had a very strained relationship with swimming because I definitely loved the sport, but my coach was he seemed to care a bit more about other things than just what I was good at, specifically more what was easiest to train the whole club. So from those ages, it was very difficult for me to swim. So yeah, the coach definitely was not my cup of tea. I moved to boarding school after that, and then the coach at boarding school, who I joined the boarding school for, left, which wasn't ideal. Um, After the first year, and it was during GCSE, so I couldn't exactly move swimming club again. Try a different GCSE board from going from one school to the other was hard enough, so I couldn't change again. So between the ages of like 12 and 17 was very difficult for swimming. It was basically me trying to motivate myself with pretty uninspiring coaches, and then between half terms and holidays, I got the opportunity to swim with my current coach, Adam Taylor, and he is one of the most inspiring coaches I've ever had. He's so dedicated to all his swimmers. Like, he won't care if one person's doing sprint freestyle and the next person's doing like long distance IM swimming. He'll just do what's best for the swimmer, and it's very refreshing to see that nowadays, because you don't get many coaches who are so dedicated to their swimmers, essentially. So yeah, I think coaching is such a huge part of swimming, and they can really make or break your career.
Absolutely. And I think the kind of reason I ask it as well is it's so applicable to other parts, to other careers and business, family, friends, what have you, just about surrounding yourself with the right people. And I understand that from Adam, the kind of thing you learned was that having that dedication and belief in your people that you surround yourself with. And now, as we're coming closer to the Olympics, what was the buildup? How did that come about? I mean, I cannot not ask this question. And just because, just for the record, y'all, the youngest athlete to compete at the age of 13, right? I was just thinking, what are some of my first memories, or just at what point in life do you kind of start remembering things in life? And I definitely remember the Olympics. I remember the Olympics in Rio. It was 2016. I remember the opening. I think there was Jennifer Lopez performing. There was like a whole ball or something. So I remember that. But it was all fun for me, right? And just what was that experience for you? It would probably be scary. It would probably feel all the things in the world. What was it like the before and like coming into it? How did that come about?
So I didn't realize I had made the Olympics. My parents did. They were like, they knew, but they didn't tell me until quite later on. They There was a journalist on the phone who had called my parents to have an interview. This was the first interview I had taken, and he was like some Brazilian journalist who had found out that I was going to be the youngest Olympian. So he called my parents, and my parents said, "Okay, he wants to speak to you. By the way, you're going to the Olympics." And I was like, "Right, this is a lot to take." And I was 13 years old. This is my first memory ever.
Wow.
I'd never taken any interviews before. I'd taken some in Nepal, but they were very casual, very informal. This was like a big Brazilian newspaper, like international. I was like, okay, right. I was freaking out. I was like, I don't want to take it. I don't want to take it. Like, what are you talking about? I remember my parents were like, if you take this interview, we'll buy you a swimming costume, a training costume. This was their bribe. They were like, we'll buy you a swimming costume. Because I was there freaking out. Like, what do you mean? I made the Olympics and you're asking me to speak to a journalist. So this was their bribe. So I speak on the phone. We speak. It goes well. I'm more excited about the swimming costume I'm getting after. But when I got to Brazil, my dad flew across with me from London to Rio, and we get there and he goes, okay, by the way, I can't stay in the Olympic Village with you. I'm not allowed. I'll be in a hotel nearby, but you're going to be in there by yourself. 13-year-old me has never travelled to a country by herself.
Why?
Now she has to stay in this huge Olympic Village by myself. And we weren't allowed to take our coaches. It was just the rule. Like, Nepal Swimming had their national coach. They brought him. That's the coach I had, which is not ideal given the fact, your coach you have a very personal relationship with them. They know exactly what you need. And, it was unfortunate, but, I was at the Olympics. Like, I'm not going to complain. Like, I'm here. So when I got there, there was just so many of like these famous athletes. I'd be walking by and I'd be like, I know you, I know you, I know you. And it was the most incredible experience. But then during the opening day ceremony, there was like a horde of reporters coming, and I was like, oh wow, like this is quite cool. Then they came towards me, and I was like, oh my god, they're coming towards me, they're going to try to speak to me. There was about 12 different reporters with their mics just like this, and I was freaking out because, I was 13, I hadn't taken many interviews, nobody told me what to say or how to say
Right.
anything. So I was quite lucky because there was a boy on the team, Pakistan, um, who was also swimming, who's my friend, who we swam together at the same home club, and he was a few years older than me, so he was about 17 at the time. He was like, look, it's gonna be fine. So he felt like an older brother to me. He was very supportive, and it was a huge blur having to take those interviews. Even now, I'm like, I don't even know what I said. I refuse to watch any of the clips because it's so embarrassing. And even after my race, there was like a photo that came out, and it was just me standing there, and there was these reporters, just like about maybe 20 of them, just asking me questions and things like that. And it was. I know a lot of people will be like, this is like the most amazing memory. Like, I remember it was a huge blur for me. I was very freaked out. It was quite anxiety driven moment, but like, as much as I can remember, it was great.
That's important.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
And I guess the competitiveness and the nature, right, of the sport, or any sport for that matter, and you there with your team and the club, how does that work?
um so people think the Olympics village is very cutthroat, and like,
Yeah.
people don't really talk to each other, but it's actually very light-hearted. People are all
Okay.
there, like at the end of the day, yes, it is the biggest swimming competition, or like any athletic sport you're doing. It is the biggest competition in the world, but everyone there was very nice. They would see me, they'd see that I was quite young, um, and they were very, very nice to me. There was a specific swimmer. I'm not sure if I should mention him because he got cancelled for doping and he's completely banned now. And he was on the Chinese team, um, who he had multiple world records at the time. He had multiple swimming titles at the time. I met him at um the cafeteria in the swimming village. So he didn't know who I was, but I knew him. Like, the whole swimming world knew him at the time. Um, and he saw me, and I was trying to get a drink out of this vending machine. It wasn't a vending machine. You open it and you have to try and reach for it, but I couldn't reach it. And this guy's like, what, like 6'6". I was about 5'5" at the time, and he reached up to get it for me, and I was like, oh, thank you. And then he said, oh, what's your name? I said my name. He said his, and I was like, yeah, I know your name, don't worry. And the next time I went to the cafeteria, I saw him again. I was like, I'm not going to say anything to him, I don't want to be that person that bothers the world record holder in this event. I don't want to be this annoying person. And he goes, oh, do you want to come have lunch with me and sit down with me and my team? So, as much as like the competitiveness is there in our when it's time to race, at the end of the day, we're all athletes. We're all part of this one bubble. And as much as I have friends at school who are so supportive of my swimming, no one's gonna know my life as well as other people who are in the same field as me. So, like, outside of the swimming arena, people are just very nice to each other. They like to get along, and yeah, it's a great atmosphere.
No, that's great to hear. I wouldn't have imagined. It's like an extended family what you're describing now. So,
Yeah.
and I guess
It's like,
yeah, and in terms of like representation, because you represent Nepal, was there ever a question? Do you represent the UK or Nepal?
yeah, I get this question a lot. So I only hold a Nepalese passport, which
Mm-hmm.
means I represent Nepal. A lot of countries have this rule that you could have dual passport, dual citizenship, where you could have like, uh, let's say, a Spanish passport and a passport from the UK. Nepal doesn't have that. You can only hold one passport. If you hold multiple, it's illegal. Right
Okay.
now, they're trying to pass a bill to allow citizenship in other countries, but as of right now, you can only hold one passport. So if I wanted to get a UK passport, I'd have to give up my Nepalese passport, which means I couldn't swim for Nepal. And a lot of people have questioned whether I hold both passports, or if I only have a UK passport and I'm swimming from Nepal. But I've only ever had a Nepalese passport. Otherwise, one, it would be illegal if I had two, and secondly, I couldn't swim for my country if I had any other passport other than a Nepalese passport.
Understood. And now, say 2016 Rio, you're leaving Brazil. It just trying to paint a picture here. Does it feel like, wow? It's a stressful moment, and now I have to work hard for the next Olympics, or it's more of a I've done it. I'm not that scared anymore. I'm ready to go and get after it.
I would say it's a bit of both. So after my first Olympics, I was the youngest person there in the swimming field as well. And I thought all my coaches were saying, this is a good experience for the next one. So I felt ready for the next one, but there was more expectation to swim better on the next one, given the fact I had experience from doing one already. And obviously you want to build upon your first one. You don't want to have results which are worse than the first one you did. And I went into that second Olympic cycle thinking, okay, I have this experience, it's gonna go great, I'm gonna be fine, this is my Olympic cycle. Obviously, things didn't plan out very well given COVID happened, which is out of anyone's control. Swimming essentially in the UK shut down for a good 8 to 10 months on and off.
Wow.
And also, I had all my big exams. So I had GCSEs, I had A levels. I was switching between swim clubs and schools. I went from boarding school to coming back here. So it was quite a stressful time in terms of an Olympic cycle. It did the racing, the swimming went well, but obviously all the planning and things like that, it was, instead of being a 4-year cycle, went from a 5-year cycle, which is quite difficult for an athlete to do. And now it kind of, I wouldn't say it messes up, but it changes the plan of the next Olympic cycle from 2021 to go to 2024. There's only a 3-year cycle. It's normally a 4-year cycle we follow. Now we have a 3-year cycle.
No pressure.
It's new. Yeah, no pressure. It's definitely new, but athletes are prepared for the unpredictable, so we're all in the same boat. I can't complain. I'm very lucky that I get to swim with my coach Adam Taylor this year. And yeah, it's very interesting.
And how, I guess the big question, how does the training look like? I mean, I imagine it to be morning in the sleep. How many hours? I was actually watching, I think there was a little interview from Michael Phelps, and he said, I owe it to the training, and I never skip a day. Do you skip a day?
Yeah.
Do you feel bad if you skip a day, or what's the attitude towards your routine?
Yeah, so I've seen interviews that he's done, and he says that he never ever skips a day of training, which is very strange. I've never met any swimmers who don't take at least one rest day. Normally on Sundays, nobody swims across the country. I don't know any, even the big programs in like the big university swimming programs in the country. I have a few friends there on the performance teams, and I believe they take Sunday off as well. But I swim 9 times a week, which is 18 hours in the pool, and then I have 3 gym sessions outside of the 18 hours in the pool. So I guess training altogether is about 21 hours, maybe a bit longer, depending on how long I take in the gym. And that is before and after school now. I go to university, so I guess before and after university on 3 of the days. And on one of the days, I swim with another boy who's part of the Swim Island team. And our coach sends me and my other friend, his name is Brandon, we go off to the London Aquatic Centre. We get given a set, we go swim it in the 50-metre pool because it's so important to be able to get one of those 50-meter pool sessions in just for our aerobic capacity. And yeah, that's essentially what my week kind of looks like. Um, it's rough, definitely. 18 hours in the pool, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
All right. I'm curious, how do you approach it? Because I'm trying to go to the gym 5 days a week for the record. I did 2 last week, which is not great, but at the end of the day, nothing will happen. I'll try it next week. How do you approach it? How do you approach training? Do you approach it as work, as something you have to do, or differently?
I guess the way I see it as it's I'm doing this because I love doing this. And if I didn't do this, I wouldn't really feel a sense of purpose. Like what am I doing? Um, and having to go to training, I feel like if I don't go, someone else in the country or someone else in the world is getting better while I'm sat doing probably
Right.
just watching Netflix. Like I'm not. If I didn't go to training, I wouldn't really be doing much else. I mean, I get my schoolwork done in time. I do all the things I need to do my assignments. So what else would I have been doing? I would rather put my time into something that's improving me, my physical and mental health, um, than just doing absolutely nothing. And I don't know, like my friends at school who I'm with now, they're always like, oh, how do you do it? Things like that. But it doesn't seem like a job for me. It's like I get in the pool and I feel better when I get out of the pool. So why would I want to take away that feeling, that high of being satisfied after a set or training um, by doing something that's not going to benefit me in any way or shape or form?
Of course. And I think a lot of people would ask, how do you manage all those things?
I guess one, a lot of practice. I've been doing it for so many years now. You have to be good at time management. Uh, During our lockdown in 2020, when I was doing my second year of A levels, so I was about to sit them, and we had a lockdown between I think around October and December in terms of sports. We couldn't enter the pool, but the schools were all still open, and I was doing my work, and I felt that because I wasn't swimming, I didn't need to be as good at time management because I had all this extra time, which would now be like nothing essentially. I wouldn't be doing anything. So I didn't think I was as on top of all my homework, all of my essays that were due when I didn't have swimming because it was like, oh, I don't need to be. So I think having a sport or having something else outside of school where you need to be so focused on time management really helped me become as organized as I am and making sure I'm on top of everything. And aside from that, like I go to a uni in London right now, they're super supportive of my swimming. Um, Even in uni in America, they were very supportive. They're very understanding of what I do, which is a huge factor of picking which um, university you're going to. So yeah, it's part of it is my time management skills, but also part of it is people around me being as
100%.
supportive as they are.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people in the world now, I think I should probably do more than just watch Netflix, sit at home on a Sunday. So what do you do on your day off? What you said you take Sunday
Yeah.
offs? Anything in particular that you like doing?
Okay, so today I had my day off. Um, I had a dentist appointment, but normally on a day off, I would I sleep until whenever I want to wake up because
Like
normally
10?
during the week it's about 3 or 4 days of waking up at 4:30 in the morning. So on a Sunday, I will sleep until whenever I feel like I want to wake up. So that's anywhere between 10:30 and 12. Um, and it can be classed as a bit of a cheat day. You can kind of eat a little more unhealthy than you would. Um, but I really just do nothing on a Sunday. Most people will try and make plans with me. I
No.
don't want to do anything. It's no. Saturday, maybe I'll do something with friends. Sunday's just about like resting my body, getting ready for the week ahead, making sure I don't have any like leftover assignments, readings. I've done all my work, because when Monday hits, it's back into a long week where there's essentially not much rest. So Sunday's just quite literally just for the rest.
100%. I mean, yeah, I try to wake up at 5:45. 4:30 is a bit too extreme. That's 5:45 is my golden spot. But the thing is, I do it like 5 days a week. So Saturday or Sunday when I want to sleep in, I can because my body's just kind of used to that time. So I just still wake up at 5:45 or even earlier sometimes. The annoying part, and you're ready to go. I was like, oh come on, I was about to get more hours in.
My mother's the same. My mum who takes me to morning training, so she wakes up at 4:30 every day now, and it's it's part of her routine. But for me, if the alarm is not going off, I'm gonna sleep.
Wow. Okay. What do you eat? I'm curious.
Okay, yeah. So lunches and dinner as well. Like if I'm not at home, she'll pack these small ready meals. So like things that I can just put in the freezer, take out, defrost, and cook. So pasta with bolognese, which has carbs and protein, which is my two main things. She'll pack. You can get them at Costco. They're just these vegetable bags that you just put in the microwave, so you can get your vegetables in. Which is obviously not my favourite. And then dinners will be something rice based with some kind of protein on the side. So I would say that I have a semi-strict diet of just essentially carbs, protein, some vegetables. You have your fats, which would be mainly like avocados, things like that, which have like good fats. But I would never say I restrict myself, because when I go to university, on the corner of my university, there's a Blank Street coffee, so it's very hard to resist a shaken brown sugar espresso. Um, and a lot of swimmers or athletes will say, we have this strict regime where you eat this, this, and this, and this. But I find that if I restrict myself eating too much, it will lead me to wanting to. Essentially, it would be like a binge. You haven't had sweets or dessert or just a biscuit or something in so long that when you do have it, you just have so much. So it's all about being careful of how much you eat of certain food groups, so that you have a balance. And I think many people think this is just for athletes, but it's pretty much the same for people who don't do a sport, having this good balance between all these different food groups. It's just not much different, I don't think.
I was just cross-checking it with what I eat, and I think so far I'm on the right track,
Yeah.
except for my love for burgers. It's very good. No, I try to add some rice. I like avocados and all of that. So pretty happy with that. Pretty happy. And I have this question. So I was watching with my family. I was watching, Cars from Disney, the movie. And so
Oh yeah.
McQueen, he had this like a ritual before every race. I'm the speed. Do you have any sort of ritual that you do before competitions?
Yeah. Okay, so one of my rituals is I have to have salmon night before I race. It's my mother always makes me salmon before the night before I race. Um, I don't know why, but I've always had salmon. I always feel like, if I'm going to eat salmon, I'm going to swim well. Sometimes it hasn't worked, but all the times I have swum well, I've had salmon. So it's, yeah.
Fair
Um,
enough.
and then my nails, I always paint my nails blue. I always have blue nails
My
before I
favorite
race.
color.
Right now they're red, but but it's always blue before I race. Every Olympics I've had blue nails. And um, before I go on the block, I always have to put my left foot in front. That's my actual superstition on the day before I swim. It's always the left foot in front. Um, and yeah, I think those are my three main race superstitions. I'm quite a superstitious person, so yeah.
Fair enough. No, that's fair enough. And so Tokyo 2020. So obviously it was postponed. So it actually happened 2021. What was it like returning
Yes.
back to the biggest stage in sports?
Um, it was definitely a very different atmosphere from 2016. So obviously at 2021, I don't know how many people are familiar, but there was no crowds allowed. There was no spectators allowed. So you weren't allowed to buy a ticket and watch. It was only the athletes that were in the stands. So it was very different to Rio, where there was crowds of people. Rio is such a big city itself. Like, so many people were coming to watch, regardless if it was heats or finals. At Tokyo, it was only other athletes who would come and watch other athletes in the stands, because they were the only people who were allowed to come and watch. So, the atmosphere it wasn't as big vibes, but I think other athletes were trying to make it as real, essentially, as the previous Olympics. So, even if a swimmer from the American team didn't have a swimmer swimming in that specific heat, they'd be up cheering for everyone else, because the only way that there would be any sound in the stadium was if us athletes made sounds for other athletes. Otherwise, it would be dead silence,
Right.
because of the lack of any spectators there. Yeah.
And I guess you could grasp more as well, because you were 18 at a time, right? So you could be like, wow, some of the things that you probably
Yeah.
didn't remember, you can just see it again and do some more interviews and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Your favorite?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. So it was definitely a more memorable experience. I feel like I made a lot more friends, people who I knew from other countries, and given the fact, there was no other spectators allowed, or the athletes in the village were even more friendly towards each other, because they tried to get other athletes from different sports to come and watch. Swimming, for example, they had some volleyball players come and watch. So it was, again, a very big wholesome atmosphere in the village.
Do you coach some of the younger swimmers?
Right now, you're not really meant to, unless you have your swim teacher certificate. But in our club,
Yeah. Okay.
we have competitions when the younger swimmers come to as well, and they come up to us and they'll be like, "So what should I do for this, or what should I do for this swim race?" And I'm like, "Oh, did you ask your coach first?" And they'll be like, "Yeah, but like you swim my event too, and you do this time." They'll come up to us and be like, "Oh, so how do I swim the 100 backstroke?" And I'll tell them how I swim it, and you try and give them advice, because when I was younger, you'd always try to speak to the older kids and listen to them, and
Exactly.
when I used to speak to, they'd be like, "Wow, like the older kids." So I wouldn't say I coach them, but when they come over and they try to speak to you, like, it's always nice, because I was one of those young kids at some point. So yeah.
100%. You always want to kind of give back. When I was in university, I graduated like what 2 months ago. But when I was in university, I was reaching out to some of the mentors and some of the people that kind of follow the path that I wanted to take. And I was asking for advice. I was asking for meetings and stuff. And now, I kind of started my full time thing and doing some things. And now people reach out to me in the same way that I reached out to others. So it's only fair to kind of give back. And it brings so much joy to me as well, because you can support them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like my
And so
mentor now.
I probably need more swimming lessons from you, though. But 2021, just to kind of top off all of the successes, like it wasn't enough, just to make sure nobody comes close to your level of achievement. You got the 30 under 30 award in, I guess it was Asia. It was entertainment and sports, right? Big deal.
Yeah. um I I wasn't super familiar with the Forbes 30 under 30 list before. I don't know why. Wasn't very familiar, but I was like, someone reached out to me from the Forbes team saying, "You've been nominated. Can you write a bio so it can go into a list of people to contend for this spot, essentially?" So I was like, okay. So I wrote this small
Right.
thing that was maybe like 10 lines long at most, and then I get an email right before my A levels, like a month or so before my A levels, being like, "Oh, you've been on the 30 and 30." And I was like, "Oh, this is so cool." Like, Forbes is like a big name, so I was like, "Oh, this is quite cool." And then I was in the car with my mum, and we were just parking up near my school, and I airdropped her this article. I was like, "Oh, mom, by the way, I'm in this article." So I airdropped her this article, and she starts freaking out in the car because obviously she knew more than me, and I seem like an idiot now, not knowing much about this 30 under 30 list. But she's like, "Oh my god, like, how did you do this? Why didn't you tell any of us?" And I was like, I didn't really know how big a deal it was, and now it's one of the biggest achievements I've ever done. So yeah, I've met so many cool people along the way in this Forbes community from 30 under 30 list. And yeah, I didn't really know how it came about, but it did, and it was great, and it's, I don't know.
Fair enough. I mean, that sounds again like a big achievement. Yeah, I don't even know how it works. That's kind of why I ask. How does it work? Do you have to be nominated? Who nominates you? You know what I mean? I just know some people that all want it. You're one of them. Great to hear that. But definitely a great achievement.
I think it's different in different industry. I think in like the more tech industry, VCs, um, startups, they do it differently than sports and entertainment and um, industries which are more like creative based. But I couldn't tell you. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. And also, if we go just a little sidetrack from sports, you also do some of the work in NGOs and charities. I have two names here that hopefully I'm not going to butcher them, but Made in Nepal and Chanti Education Institute. Curious to hear about what does your role include, and why did you pick those two in particular?
Yeah. Okay. So Shanti Education Initiative, I picked that one after the earthquake in Nepal, quite a few years back. So I was over in Nepal for a swimming competition, and we were just going about our day, and I was playing table tennis with my mum at home, just doing nothing because I was resting because the next few days the national competition was happening for selections. And then there was this huge earthquake, and it was this crazy experience. We were under a table, like there was continuous aftershocks after. Um, Luckily, no one in my family was affected. There was no deaths or casualties in my family, but a lot of people in Nepal's were lives were taken, injuries, houses were damaged. As it is, the infrastructure in Nepal isn't great, so a lot of schools and houses were destroyed. So after the earthquake, my dad stayed on in Nepal for a bit longer. So he's a doctor in England, and he wanted to help people in Nepal where he could. Um, but I had to go back for school, and then my dad started speaking with this charity, Shanti Education Initiative, which essentially helped to rebuild schools which were destroyed in the earthquake. And I thought, okay, well, if I want to go into NGO work and put my prize money that I win from somewhere that's actually going to make a difference, I would rather put it towards, kids and people in my country who have been affected by this horrible earthquake. So that's kind of how I went into Shanti Education Initiative. So my role there is Goodwill Ambassador. So I have donated a lot of money there, but also I have had hands-on experience. Like I've helped rebuild schools by hand. I mean, I didn't do all of it. I was the only person laying the bricks, but I was there to help. And I visited a lot of the schools in the valleys and places where it's a lot more remote and kids have to travel quite far to even have access to schools. And I've taught a few lessons there in English and in Nepali. So that's my main role at that NGO. And then my other NGO, Mighty Nepal. So the woman who founded the NGO, she was CNN World Hero, I believe, in 2001 or 2002. So she is essentially combating human trafficking in Nepal. And this is a topic I'm very passionate about trying to combat. After university, I would love to have a bigger role in this foundation. I'm Goodwill ambassador there as well, so I do donate a lot of my prize money that I win from swimming competitions to this foundation. Um, but I also have been to the rehabilitation centres across Nepal and have taught lessons at their school they have to rehabilitate children, send them off to have jobs in the actual world or universities where opportunities would have been taken given them if they had been previously trafficked.
100%. I love the fact that you're not just putting money towards that, but you also go out there, you to see the schools and do classes and all
Yeah,
that. And honestly, very admirable. I love to hear that. And there's so
thank you.
many organizations out there. And, I've been working with WWF or the Royal Air Force, right? And there are so many organizations. It's always great to see people who do it. And you can also kind of learn more about them just by looking at some of the NGOs they were working with and share projects they were passionate about. So I absolutely love to hear that. Talking about schools, you are a proud student at Tufts University in lovely Boston, Massachusetts. Somebody told me
Yes,
Boston is
I
your favorite
am.
city.
Boston and London are now they're getting head to head now.
So I guess, to any city, right? If you compare cities, you look at your kind of favorite place, right? And yeah, what's your favorite place in, I guess, Boston and London? Let's compare those two.
Okay, so in Boston, I would have to say my favorite area is it's called Seaport, so it's near the financial district. It's you can see I believe the Charles River. You can see the Charles River, and it's a lot less busy than in the main Newbury Street, which would essentially be their Oxford Street. In summer you can see all the boats go by and the ferries there, and then there's so many nice small cafes which aren't the big chains, and you have a few shops around there, and it's just a very nice peaceful area to either get your work done or just go on a stroll around um, on a cold or a hot day. My favorite thing to do is you can rent the bikes and just bike down the Charles River down by Seaport, which is it's always fun to do. And I guess in London, my favorite place would be um hmm, I would have to say so. I swim in Swiss Cottage, so I quite like the St John's Wood area. Um, I think the high street's quite cute.
Okay.
The they also have small nice cafes around there. Um, and yeah, it feels like a second home at this point. I'm always in St John's Wood, Swiss Cottage area, so um, just for my swimming, that's where I swim. So I would have to say that area.
I love it. I've been giving you the pause. Probably Boston is going up slowly, but curious to hear what were some of the universities that you were looking at? Did you pick Tufts because it was in Boston, or because of facilities, or people, or what was that process like?
Yeah, so I had never been to America before. I got to Tufts freshman year. I was planning to visit all these universities when I was a junior in high school, um, but then COVID happened, so I never managed to visit America. I completely cancelled out the whole of the West Coast because I know I'm going over to a different country, but I definitely didn't want to be that far away from home. Um, so West Coast
Okay.
is kind of out of question. So I stayed on the East Coast. Um, for me, a huge part of my university journey, although swimming's like a huge aspect of my life, I want to come out with a good degree from a good school. Um, and this kind of narrowed it down to a couple universities. So I'm majoring in international relations. So the three universities I kind of um, loved after looking at all the schools virtually, that's the only way I could really look, was Tufts, NYU, and Georgetown. Those were my top three. And then I originally ED'd at NYU, and then I got into NYU and I dropped my ED, and then I applied to Tufts and Georgetown. I got into both the schools, and I said the huge factor that I had um, which pushed me towards Tufts was the swimming coach at Tufts, and he's a great guy. He was very supportive my first 2 years at Tufts. Now I'm doing a year abroad in London as part of Tufts in London. So Tufts was primarily academic based because I do want to come out of my undergraduate experience with a good degree from a good university, and Tufts was one of the best IR programs in the world, and obviously swimming had quite a big impact as well in terms of what the coach was like, the facilities were like, the team culture, training schedule, all of that played a huge role as well. And eventually I picked Tufts because it had a great combination of all of those things.
And what I love about your story, it keeps coming back to people. Again, with Tufts, it was the coach, it was the people. So it's just so important, again, to surround yourself with the right people, and nothing much more to say about that. Just how it is, honestly. And when I saw your the whole module course name, it made me look like my degree in marketing was a waste of time. It looked so cool. It was all those things like security and international relations and whatnot. It was a whole thing. I was like, wow, you're on it, honestly.
I guess I've tried to be as much on it as I can. I've tried to branch out to as many things. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do in my future life. So I've tried to be as diverse with my majors and minors to open as many doors as I can. I'm still quite unsure what I want to do. So yeah.
I mean, you got time, right? And I think through some of the work you've done, again, I think you tried to do some work in law and banking, NGOs, obviously startups. Do you want to stay in, say, business or marketing, and what does the future look like for now, at least for October 2023?
Okay, so for right now, it's all about, I go to right now I go to London School of Economics. So I'm here for a year abroad. I would say my school right now is very internship driven. The people at my school are very driven people. They intern most summers somewhere big. You have your big household names like Goldman Sachs, McKinsey. You hear all these big names. So right now it's kind of just focusing on how to balance having an internship this summer and doing Paris 2024 Olympics at the same time, and also trying to figure out, what field I want to go into. Right now, after speaking to you, obviously, you've been a huge role in my learning about the cybersecurity field. So I definitely looked more into cybersecurity. I do international relations with a concentration in international security. So cybersecurity was something I was definitely looking into, like threat and intelligence. And yeah, I mean, the next couple of years is just finding out what I want to do long term, just trying to experiment in all these random great fields and take as many opportunities as I can to have tasters in every field before making this big decision of where I kind of want to land for the next few years after university, whether that's a master's degree or a job before masters, or no masters and just work.
Absolutely. I mean, again, love to hear it. Something tells me that whatever you decide to do, you'll end up straight on the Forbes list for doing it. So I'm sure a lot of more to come. And again, very excited to see you in Paris. It's going to be, again, it's going to be a full moment. You'll have the opportunity to see the crowd, to see the people, to see it in full like it was just when you started in 2016. So good luck with that. Last question for today. Any kind of advice you have for people who are maybe 13, 14, 15, want to get into swimming or any other sports on the big stage? What would you tell them?
I would probably say, one, it's just never too late to start anything. Like, you have world record holder Adam Peaty. He's the most amazing breaststroker, and at his 15, 16 years old, he didn't even make regional times, and now he's winning multiple Olympic medals. So you can't fail unless you try. And I guess the biggest failure is not trying. So I guess it's never too late to try something new.
Awesome. What a great note to end this podcast. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.